בשם השם נעשה ונצליח, שיעור תורה, ברוכים הבאים, שבוע טוב, שבוע מבורך. We're back here continuing our Jewish HaShkafa series. Tonight's shiur, BeEzrat HaShem, will be for the refuah shlema for Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rav Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Avi Mori David ben Esriya, Doris bat Jora, Orit bat Ilana, Amir ben Shahin, Marsha bat Julia, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Cephas ben Marsha, Alexander ben Marsha, Louis ben Marsha, Shaul ben Farzane, Yitro ben Avraham, Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, and all of Am Yisrael and all of the righteous Noahites that continue to do everything possible to fulfill the world of HaShem. So with that being said, we have, Baruch HaShem, lots of Torah to learn. Just as a quick reminder for everybody, KIRUVstore.org. KIRUVstore.org is a website everybody should go if you're located in the United States to order some copies of my book. You can get 20 copies of my book for free if you have a significant outreach ability and you want to get more copies. You could contact me and we could arrange for you to get more than 20 copies. The book is in Hebrew, and we're looking for people to distribute the new set of 5,000 copies that we got in the States just in the last few days. Baruch Hashem, about 15,000 copies have already been distributed. A lot of great feedback in HeRETICS in the United States. So anyone that wants to give out the books in their community, please go to KIRUVstore.org. Of course, if you want to also get the USBs, for Tikkun BEIT, we still have some left. These, Baruch Hashem, have been a hot seller, and you can get yourself some of these as well as the books that are in English about wasting seed and all the halachot, all the different details about it, the dangers of being addicted to immorality, whether by self or with others. Go to KIRUVstore.org, get yourself these two things, and BeEzrat HaShem, help yourself and others do tshuva. And of course, for those of you that don't have the ability to give for whatever reason or another, contributing to it is also welcome. Of course, as everyone realizes, this stuff costs a lot of money. And we're looking for partners. Lastly, we have the event here in Florida on the 23rd of February. So we're talking about just 10 days away. Baruch Hashem, it's going to be a very big event. It's next week. Some people are flying in from different parts of the country. Of course, we have some locals, but I don't know. I think there's more people coming from outside of the state than there are coming from the state. Reserve your spot for yourself, for your family, for your friends. Make it a trip. You could email us, Leah at BeEzratHashem.org, or you can go to chizuk.live. Chizuk, CHIZUK.LIVE. Whether you want to become a sponsor of the event, and get yourself every single, a merit for every single mitzvah that comes out of that event, which of course includes every word of Torah, every tshuva that somebody does, every single chizuk that a person does. You could inherit yourself literally a new place in Gan Eden just from being part of the event. So anyone that wants to be a sponsor in the event, there's 3 levels of sponsorships. Please feel free to go to the websites. So with that being said, we have our Jewish HaShkafa. We're in chapter 3, section 30. The Chazon Ish HaKadosh has been detailing for us the problem where you have that nothing new, nothing that perhaps has been created by us or anyone close to us. But the issues where there's fighting among Am Yisrael, when there's people that are fighting for the truth, and unfortunately there are people that are fighting for falsehood. But of course, both sides believe they're right. The people that are fighting for the truth are fighting for what's right because they have sources from the Torah that tell them that they're right. And the people that are fighting for the sheker, they're fighting for the heresy, also believe that they're right, and they will even distort the Torah, as the Chazon Ish told us last week. They will even distort the Torah to make it seem as if they have a source for it, and no different than how the Nathan Slifkin, Shem Reshaim Yerkav, has done countless times against many Rabbanim, yours truly included. He just wrote another article about me, about how I'm Hitler's rabbi and I'm a dangerous person. And quite frankly, one of the things that inspired some of the things of this lecture tonight is the comments that are made on his feed, because you'll see them, and if it wasn't for the knowledge that you know what they're commenting on, you would think they're all fighting for the right reason. So I'm going to read off some of these comments for you guys to see how easy it is to misunderstand, something without really reading the details. So, of course, he writes, when an influential, crazy rabbi tells his violent followers that various people are enemies of the nation who should be killed, this is no laughing matter. Now, of course, if anybody else wrote this, you would say, yeah, you're right. A crazy person, whether they be rabbi or not, that has, violent followers, and they're called enemies, then this is not a laughing matter. Sure, yeah, especially he says they should be killed. Absolutely. And then you see the comments. Aviv says, wow, what an indescribable monster, with lack of spell check. Another Rasha, Shmuel, who likes to comment things, light the fire even more with a lot of things. I've seen his name many times. Mizrahi and Reuven are really dangerous people. Psh, what a work of genius. Aviv, seems like on this we agree. Oh, so even among the Reshaim, there's not much agreement, apparently. Let's see, what else do we have? Then you have, he's basically saying, will no one rid me of this turbulent priest? Not really sure what that means, but okay, fine. Then you have, let me know if he's ever planning a trip to the UK. Another guy says, Yosef Mizrahi was banned. That's one of the reasons these two hate Rabbi Mervis. It's actually not, but, let's just make stuff up as we go along. We follow the author's advice. The person says, apparently this Eve Sachs, she owns the United Kingdom. She owns the entire country. I have no idea if she's related to Rabbi Sachs, Alav Shalom. But the guy David says that, that's the reason, because Rabbi Mizrahi was banned from the UK. I don't think he was banned from the UK, but okay, let's just pretend that's the case. That's why we hate Rabbi Mervis. That's why. It's not that he wrote a book promoting homosexuality and interfaith. No, it has nothing to do with that. Okay, Shai. Shai is baffled that why did Nathan Slifkin have a tattoo on his forehead of a swastika? So Nathan Slifkin is trying to convince his follower that it was only photoshopped. Okay, then you have some people like this David Ossi. Does the Rabbinical Alliance of America have an ethics code for members? And would this be considered a violation? This meaning what? The article by Slifkin? Like they're in essence saying that I have violated a ethics code of the Rabbinical Alliance of America. According to Slifkin, I violated it. Okay. Of course, Ari Rossman is always there to plead the case of his highway robbery, manipulation of people's privacy, and also, most importantly, his financial agenda, where he says in some of the videos, Yaron describes himself as a member of RA, but quickly discloses that the views expressed in the videos are his own and don't reflect the organization's reviews. But of course, he has a solution. The solution that he has for me is that everybody give him money. It's in order for him to get somebody in from public school to yeshivot. That's his agenda. In reality, he takes all the money to his own pocket. But anyway, the Ari continues. Then you have David arguing with Ari about how this has nothing to do with with that. It's an ethics violation. Blah blah blah. Let's see. Then you have some people really upset that a lot of people like us, even though apparently we're cult leaders. Then you have Rifki saying, I'm not surprised in the least. He appeals to people who want to twist the Torah that places them as all superior. So in essence, we're the ones that have a twisted Torah. Then Ari again publicizes his GoFundMe way to steal people's money and also their olam haba. Then you have let's see. Oh, David Kerner sent an email to Rabbinical Alliance. They want me to be banned from there. Then Avi said you should file a police complaint for incitement. Police complaint for incitement. Fine. Avram is saying the certificate is not an ordination. It only says that he's a member in good standing. An ordination has a specific wording, which this document lacks. And then David says, but yes, that's how all fraudsters operate. Also, just the fact that they recognize him as a rabbi can be used to imply that he is one. Well, actually, the Yore smicha that I have over there actually is something you guys may want to look into. So, let's see. Jonathan says, I have said that before, and so again, this kind of incitement to violence requires those aware or targeted by it to open a criminal complaint with law enforcement. If this crosses international borders, then in each country, and there should be a takedown request to the host of such content. This kind of radicalization is a physical danger to individuals and the community. Yocheved, I've asked Torah anytime to stop including Rabbi Mizrahi's videos. I never heard back. Surprise, surprise. Let's see. Adam, the people behind Torah Anytime and Chazak are supporters of Rabbi Mizrahi. No point in contacting them. So he's trying to discourage her because he apparently already tried. David Waxman is praising how we have many people that appeal to our that our information appeals to them, our teachings appeal to them. Levi Welton, Baruch Hashem just contacted the Rabbinic Alliance. Thank you for bringing awareness to this. This was one of my favorite. He claims to be a rabbi, so he says Baruch Hashem just contacted the Rabbinical Alliance. Thank you for bringing awareness to this. Awareness. He brought awareness. Then Carolyn is asking why people call him a rabbi. And then Jerry Aloof, Rav Slifkin. I've learned in life that when someone says they'd kill you, if they could, they usually mean it. It should be taken seriously. I think this should be reported for your own safety. No one ever talked to him. Nobody even talked. No one threatened him. But nonetheless, he wrote the article in such a fashion that he says that as if we threatened him. Never talked to the guy in my life. But anyway, let's see. Aviv. True, I would kill you if only I thought I could get away with it, would probably cause me to consider some sort of extraordinary measures. Well, hold on a second. Aviv, you're kind of messing up everything because Nathan said that we're the violent ones, not you guys. You guys are like the nice, really nice and, amicable and peaceful, not killing people. Aviv, you messed it up, buddy. You want to kill people. That's not a good thing. Nathan, you got to take care of your student. Mitch Schindler. I did write to the RRA protesting his membership. All I can say is I would be honored to be listed with the group of people he condemns. Well, Mitch, no one knows who you are, so there's no reason for us to condemn you. This is the most fame you're ever going to get in your life. Igor, their influence reaches even Germany, and some people are fascinated by them. I see their CDs in a local kosher store in Berlin.
Some people don't accept any authority besides theirs, which is very dangerous. Okay, Igor. Then Shmuel, of course, repeats again, Mizrahi and Reuven are really dangerous people. I don't know why Reuven felt it was necessary or appropriate to threaten someone saying it. If there was no laws, you would kill apostates. Maybe it's time for the RA to remove him. They are like Sith Lords hiding in plain sight in the role of rabbis. So, now, if you read this with knowledge of what I just told you, that it's all written by Nathan Slifkin, then of course you automatically have a bias that if you're watching my lecture and let's say you're a fan, you're a student, you're a supporter, then of course you're saying these people are crazy, you already have angry feelings in your heart, and in essence, you have already made your decision. But the reality is that if you didn't know who I was, or you didn't know who wrote it, or you didn't know what it's written about, automatically it would lead to certain conclusions just by simply reading these words. Those conclusions are in essence biases, and these biases are what the Chazon Ish has been trying to teach us about, that are in themselves extremely dangerous for a Jew to have, for anybody to have, in their decision-making process. Why? Because if you have a bias, in essence, you've already made a decision. You know, sometimes people tell me, oh, listen, what do you think between the fight between, let's say, Arav Shach and Alav Shalom and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Alav Shalom? I say, well, this is the fight between them. It was the fight between them. There's nothing for me to get involved, and neither should you. But do you really think people would really agree with Rav Shach? Oh, so you've already made up your mind, so why are you asking me? So, you see, the problem is that many times people are asking for an opinion not because they're looking to get more information in order to conclude themselves, but rather because they want to see if you agree with them. If we continuously agree, then we continuously be friends. But if we disagree, then automatically you you're the opposite. You are the enemy. You are the mitnaged, and so on. So it's very important for a person to look at their own cases of whatever they're dealing with, whether it's personal issues and managing their marriage, their parenting, their job, their employees, whatever it is, or if they're a rabbi, or if they're a leader of some kind, you have to eliminate all of these biases, because these biases, of course, already lead you to the wrong direction more times than not. And one of the beautiful things is that when you are actually like a fly on the wall, or you actually have the insight of really who's talking and what's going on, then you realize that, wait, what he just said is only because there's a bias, and what he just said is only because there's a bias, and what he just said is only because of the bias, and you realize that in reality, these words are not really a compilation of thoughts, but rather these are an expression of emotions, which are two completely different things. So, of course, Nathan Slifkin, Shimre Shaim Yerkav, is a heretic, not according to just us, but according to Gdolei Torah, whether it be a Rav YESHIVA, Rav Ovadia, and many, many other Gdolim that have called him a heretic, that have called his books heretical and forbidden to be sold. Unfortunately, this just made his books more popular among the people that seek heresy. But nonetheless, at least the warning came out there, and there's not really a question of whether he's a heretic or not. The question is, why does he still have an audience? And the answer is because there are other people that look for that type of heresy. But yet the heretics preach their heresy as if it's true, and with a lot of passion and zeal, and they preach to a certain type of audience that yearns for it, that sees their lies as true. Because in reality, if a single person from his audience actually did the investigation required to make a real decision, they would know that all I did was state something that's in the Torah. I didn't state anything new. I stated something that's simply a statement in the Torah. And quite frankly, it had nothing to do with him. It had to do with somebody completely different at a different event, which is a different Rasha that I already knew about before I showed up at an event, that he likes to come to different rabbinical events and cause a problem and to confuse the rabbis and confuse the audience. And we actually caught it on camera that he did catch one of the guys that attended that lecture and got his phone number and asked him to call him and to discuss certain things with him. Of course, his whole agenda is to preach heresy, like a Christian missionary or an atheist or literally a spiritual murderer. This guy goes to lectures in order to trap people, in order to trap even the rabbis and confuse them and make them look bad. And of course, he wasn't playing with the typical type of speaker that he's used to. So when we fought back, and of course, Baruch Hashem made a Kiddush Hashem to show him that he doesn't know anything. He's not only a fool, but also a person that we, made him feel so uncomfortable that he showed himself his way out. But one of the things that we had to make sure that the audience realizes is what is the Torah's opinion of such a person, because that is what dictated our actions. It wasn't an emotional response. It wasn't a response that came because of anger or became because I wanted to make him feel bad. It was literally a response that's in accordance with the Torah. It was what you're supposed to do. And in fact, if we were at the time of the Sanhedrin, we would be able to do more, which is what I told the audience, which is if it was allowed, meaning if, and I expressed it later on, if we were at the time of the Sanhedrin, this person would be killed. If I was allowed to kill him, I would kill him, meaning I would be happy to have the merit to be on such a Sanhedrin, to be part of a Sanhedrin, and actually execute such a person that's causing so many people to abandon God, to abandon Torah, to abandon the truth. Because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants in the world. So saying that statement is not a radicalization, it's not an independent statement, it's simply stating what the Torah says. If you read the Chumash, you read Parashat Ki Tisa this week, talks about how a person that's a sinner gets a death penalty. And the same thing last week, and the same thing last week. And almost every parasha in the written Torah talks about death penalties, either that were executed, or could be executed, or will be executed, or some type of heavenly death penalty, or rabbinical death penalty. The point is that the Torah is full of these types of statements because HaKadosh Baruch Hu means business. And he wants us to know that he means business, not because he wants us to die, chas v'shalom, and not because he wants to kill us, but rather because fear is the most motivating emotion that a human being has. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a person. He instilled into each one of us fear of everything. And as Rabbi Israel Misalant says in his letters, and Rav Blazer comments on it, where a person, a human being, has a natural fear of almost everything. Almost everything. Whether it's fear of bugs, fear of poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of how people view him or her, fear of heights, fear of space, too much, too little, fear of all types of different things. The only fear that does not come naturally to a person is fear of the Almighty. That fear, which is the only fear that is actually permissible, and quite frankly, the only fear that is obligatory in a person, is something that a person has to work on, says Rabbi Israel Misalant. So the fear of the Almighty, which is one of the 613 mitzvot that we have in the Torah, is something that a person has to work on. It's not something that you have naturally. And that is the most important fear. But fear of everything else comes to many people naturally. Some people more, some people less. Some people have psychological issues to the point where their fear turns into a phobia, which is a completely different level of fear. It's not a fear it's a fear that gets out of control, put it that way. And the point being is that this fear that Hashem instilled into mankind is necessary. It's necessary for us to function. It's necessary for us to know the right from wrong. It's necessary for us to operate in the world. Because if we were really, truly not afraid of everything or anything, then quite frankly, the world will turn into a Sodom and Gomorrah, world of the time of Noah, and worse. And worse. And this is in essence what happened at those times where HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that the mankind lost their right to live when they literally had no fear of anything. They didn't fear God and they didn't fear each other. They stole from each other out in the open. They raped each other's wives. They committed every type of immoral crime known to man in the open, in privacy. They did literally everything possible that simply they wanted to, anything that they yearned to do, any desire that they had, and they had no fear. And the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world only for the sake of your fear, meaning that their actions were antithetical to the purpose of the world. He created the world so you fear him. And when a person does not fear Hashem, in essence, they are losing their right to exist. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us fear everything out there naturally because it's necessary for us to function, not just as righteous Jews or righteous Noahites, but simply as decent human beings. You have to fear authority, or else you're simply going to take advantage of everybody. You have to fear loneliness, or else you're going to commit adultery or all types of other disgusting crimes against humanity. You have to fear the law, or else you're going to steal from people. You have to fear the health issues, or else you're going to eat, drink, and intake every type of bad thing for you just for the sake of a good feeling. And of course, unfortunately, people that don't have this fear or don't have the wisdom to fear end up consuming a lot of drugs and a lot of alcohol, a lot of bad things for them, only to find out later on that had they been a little bit more afraid than they were, then they wouldn't have gotten into this addiction of drugs or money or types of immoral things, alcohol and so on. So the point being is that fear is what drives us. A person that is in a hurry to go to an appointment and needs to get there and wants to get there and has a car that is able to get there really, really fast is not going to do it because they're afraid of getting pulled over by police and getting a ticket. So they're going to drive the speed limit, perhaps a little more, a little less, but they're not going to drive as fast as they truly desire to, as fast as they feel they need to. They're afraid for their life, they're afraid for their license, they're afraid for their pocket. This is a necessary fear, not just for them, but also for the society around them. Because if everybody drove as if there's no speed limit and there's no risk, then what would happen is that there would be a lot more accidents, a lot more death, a lot more injuries, and unfortunately, a lot more problems to mankind. So you have the traffic laws in order to protect ourselves from ourselves and also from each other. The same goes with everything else in life. If you go to a company and you have a business or you have a job, each company has some type of written law, some type of compliance manual, some type of written manual, some type of oral manual. Every company has it. The bigger, the more they have. There's a spoken law and there's an unspoken law. Sometimes the unspoken law is unspoken until it's exposed, and sometimes the unspoken law is spoken all the time. Hence the situations that's happening out there in the media in these days, where you have all of these filthy sexual predators that take advantage of people that are inferior to them in position and power, whether it be a secretary or an extra on a set, or somebody that's a lower position looking up to the bigger people to get up the corporate ladder or the Hollywood ladder. These people get taken advantage of all the time. Not just taken advantage of by getting underpaid, get taken advantage of by being molested, being raped, being taken advantage of in a lot of different ways. And everyone knows it's wrong and everyone knows it's happening, but this unspoken law is simply quieted. Why? Because number one, some people also want to do it. Other people are afraid to get in trouble. And third is some people just simply don't care for anything but themselves. But then one day somebody does get the courage to expose it, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows it to become a very big thing, and then you see the CEO quits all of a sudden, and this one quits, and that one gets fired. Well, the truth is, you all knew it was happening the whole time, and it wasn't just last week or last month or last year. It's been happening for years, in some cases for decades. And everyone knew it was wrong the whole time. How come all of a sudden you fired him now? Why didn't you fire him before you paid him $10 million last year, or $20 million, or $15 million? How come you didn't pay him throughout all of that other time? Because the oral law that you had was simply left orally, so long as you had a bias, an agenda, where, listen, he's doing it to them, not to me, and I benefit enough from him not to care about this other person, and so on and so forth. Everyone has a certain bias. The truth is, the only law that's never biased, the only law that's always true is the law of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But of course, we have to realize that if we are going to stay true to the law, we have to realize that the law is always the same. It's not something that is going to change just because we don't like it or just because we disagree with it. So many times you'll read things or you'll hear things in the Torah that perhaps are opposite of the way you're living your life. If you are a person of truth, then you'll say, listen, I get it. This is the opposite of what I was doing. And that means if I don't change, I will get punished, because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. He gave us a system of reward and punishment. If we do what he says, he gives us a reward. If we do against what he said, we get a punishment. Simple. Not just in this world, but also in the next world. And the punishment in the next world is much, much more severe. Anyone that does not believe in reward and punishment is considered a heretic who doesn't believe in the Torah, no different than an atheist. But the point being is that when a person sees that statement, whether it be in a book or it be in a lecture or wherever it is, he sees that, she sees that, and it's contrary to what they believe. It's contrary to what they're doing. If they're a person of truth, they'll simply say, listen, I'm wrong, HaShem is right, I have to decide whether my desire for this thing, is simply to a point where I care less about the eventual punishment. But the truth is that people of falsehood don't do that. What do? They do simply what Slifkin does. They do what the rest of the heretics do, and they start manipulating the truth in order to fit their desires. And hence the reason of why he will take a statement that was told about somebody else. It would also apply to him, don't get me wrong, and he'll quote me for that, and it's okay that he does. But the reality is that statement had nothing to do with him. It had to do with somebody else that was doing something that the Torah says would warrant a death penalty at the time of the Sanhedrin. That's all it is. It's no different than reading this week's parasha where it says that a mechalel Shabbat, someone that desecrates Shabbat, gets a death penalty, mot yumat. And it's not just a death penalty by God. We find out later on in the Torah that it's actually a death penalty in the worst type of stoning. Now again, the heretics are going to say, yes, but we don't implement this anymore. You're right, but that doesn't actually invalidate the death penalty. As the Gemara actually already discussed those people that say, oh, since we don't do it, it doesn't apply. Wrong. The Gemara says that even though death penalties were removed from Am Yisrael, since the time the Sanhedrin was the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, the Sanhedrin was no longer already executing death penalties for about 4 decades before the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. But since the dismemberment of the Sanhedrin, there was no more death penalties by man. But the death penalties are still 100% valid by the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu still executes all death penalties that he decreed in the Torah. If it's stoning, then the Gemara says it's like a bull running over somebody or the person falling in from a building. Whether you want to consider a car accident or a plane crash or any type of event similar to stoning, that's what a death penalty is. That's a heavenly death penalty. Sometimes you'll have a burning by fire. Sometimes you'll have choking. All different types of death happens in the world. And anyone that did a little bit of research on this particular topic in the past, you'll see that the average person, according to the census I reviewed of the U.S. Death rate versus birth rate, although the average lifetime is a little bit over 70 years old, I think it's 72, 73 years old, something around that range, the reality is that it's not that the average person lives 72, 73 years. because the vast majority of people die well before that. Well before that. Why did they still consider the average 72, 73 years? That's if somebody lives their full life. But the vast majority of people die a unexpected death. Car accidents, disease, and on and on and on. And the Gemara says there are over 900 ways that HaKadosh Baruch Hu kills people. So the point being is that the vast majority of people never reach this 70-year-old plus lifetime. Many of them die much earlier than that. Anyone that lives long enough knows that some of his high school buddies died in high school, or died. They have family members that died as children, or they have other family members or friends that died as young enough to be in their late teens, early 20s, or 30s and 40s. And everybody knows somebody that died young. And you're not alone. Many people, in fact, the majority of people die young, die an unexpected death. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's running the world. Not your scientists, not your heretics, not the people that choose to not believe, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. He's the one running it. And there's no such thing as a person getting hurt on their finger, needless to say, dying without there being a reason for it. There is always a reason for it. The Gemara Masechet Chulin says that a person does not get pricked on their finger without there being a bet din in Shamayim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu designate allowing such a thing to happen. Allowing such a thing to happen. Paskening that this is what will happen. So in essence, although there isn't a Sanhedrin in this world that is operating, functioning like it did a couple of thousand years ago, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still runs the world the same way. And he simply decides to execute whenever he wishes. Just because somebody sins doesn't mean that Hashem is going to execute right away. He wants people to have free choice. He wants people to have the ability to do tshuva, to change. Baruch Hashem that he did, allowing people like myself that weren't born into a religious family, that weren't born into a Torah observant family that's keeping Shabbat, so he allowed me to do tshuva. Of course, I had to go through my own trials and tribulations until I did. But the point being is that Hashem knows what he's doing. But if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted or wants, he could execute whatever he wants. It's his world. It's his world to run. And all of those people that simply think that just because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not killing off people by the zillions, on a daily basis, that means that it's no longer applicable. That just means you're an ignorant, arrogant fool. That's all it means. Simply just that's all it means. But of course, people like Slifkin will do whatever they can to preach their heresy in such a fashion that it seems so true to the fans, to the supporters, to the followers, that they're going to say, oy vey, how could they be such a rabbi or such a person named Yaron Reuven that is preaching hatred and preaching to kill people? Had you actually watched the video and looked up the sources that I quoted and decided to believe the word of God, then you would realize I'm not doing anything new at all. In fact, what you're doing is new. What I said, what I'm doing, is the same thing that's been done for 3,300 years, since the time of Matan Torah. That's what I'm doing. What you're doing, which is in essence saying that death penalty is simply not null and void, it's no longer applicable, everybody is perfect and can do whatever they want, and whatever mumbo jumbo you think you're right about, that's what's new. That's the new religion that you're all creating, but yet still have the audacity to call it Judaism. Now, we fight this tooth and nail. We fight also the people that invite missionaries. We fight other forms of heresy where people that say that God needs us, or people that are against the mystical aspects of Judaism, which also happens to be Nathan Slifkin and his friends, saying that the Rambam hated the mysticism and didn't believe in it. Apparently they don't read, or they read what they want to read and they don't read the rest. Because if you simply look at what the Rambam actually wrote, you wouldn't have to spend that much time to realize that the Rambam not only believed, but he actually loved the Kabbalah. And in the commentary to the Mishnah, the beginning of his commentary to the entire Mishnah, he talks about how the subject of Kabbalah, the subject of Agada is only for smart people. He actually says this. It's only for smart people. Why? Because people that are not smart are not going to believe it, and they're not going to know how to use the mystical aspects of Judaism, the Agadot, the stories. They're going to misinterpret them and actually fall because of it. So it's specifically meant for smart people. Go ahead. You don't have to take my word for it. Go open commentary of the Rambam on the Mishnah, the beginning. You'll see within perhaps the first 50, 60 pages, you'll see, depending if you have a translation or not, it could be the first 20 pages, you'll see how the Rambam himself is talking about Kabbalah, talking about mysticism, how it's not only something extraordinary, but rather it's something that is specifically for smart people, not heretics, not people that are looking for excuses to justify their sins, but smart people. Now, if a person has a bias where they're looking to simply express their agenda, then regardless on which side they're in, whether they're on the side of the heretic or they're on the side of at least trying to preach the truth, either way they're a problem. Why? Because if you have a personal agenda, if your agenda is not for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but rather a personal agenda, you're looking to make more money, you're looking to become more famous, you're looking to bring a new idea to the world, or whatever, a prideful objective you have, that's a problem. That's a very dear problem. Why? Because it distorts the nature of your entire arguments altogether, and we'll see how. Now, the Chazon Ish told us in the first couple of paragraphs of this section, section 30, how the spiritual disease that the evil inclination uses in order to make people lose their olam haba, the spiritual disease of having people lose their faith in the chachamim, having people lose the faith in the sages, that spiritual disease, it all begins with somebody leading them to believe that this chacham, that this sage has a bias. Saying that a chacham has a bias is worse than saying any curse word on this chacham. Saying that a chacham has any agenda, a personal agenda, is worse than anything else you can do to him, because it's literally taking his entire life and saying that the whole thing is a lie. Now, of course, to the person saying it, it doesn't seem like that. It says, what? Everybody has an agenda. Thereby is the problem. There is the problem. You think he's like everybody. The second you think he's like everybody, you have made him the opposite of what he is. You made him the opposite of what he is. Now you're going to say, yeah, no, I don't think that the Rambam is like everybody else. I just think you are like everybody else. Whatever rabbi you're making fun of, whether it be myself or anybody else, I just think you are. That's the problem. The second that you take any chacham today that's a real chacham that has Yirat Shamayim, and you simply say that they are a liar, a manipulator, because they have a personal agenda, because they want to make more money, because they want to become more famous, because of whatever they have an agenda, that is in essence the worst possible thing that you can do to that person, because you are discrediting the premise of everything that they live for. Now, of course, if you're right, then that person was never chacham to begin with, was never a real person with Yirat Shamayim to begin with, was never a righteous person to begin with. But if you're wrong, that comment inherits the person that said it, Gehenom, that is unfortunately a very, very long sentence. A sentence that is, unfortunately, for that person, a sentence that is worse than they could ever imagine. A sentence that makes the Holocaust look like a kindergarten, play, a kindergarten sandcastle of some kind, or one of those places where the kids play with the sand. The sentence that a person gets for simply taking a chacham, taking a kosher Jew, taking a person that is, for all intents and purposes, has Yirat Shamayim, and saying that they're doing it because they have an agenda, you're suspecting a kosher person, you have a very serious problem. Now, even more so if that person has the ability, the know-how, and actually executes those abilities and know-hows to help people do tshuva, and you question that person, you, my dear friend, are an enemy of God. And I promise you, you don't want to be an enemy of God. Now, the Chazon Ish is going to elaborate. But first we have to get a recap of what he already said. There is another disease of the spirit that the evil inclination uses to keep the belief in the sages, the emunat chachamim, from entering people's heart. And that is the fickle scale of personal interest, the halachic term of negia, bias. The disciple is obligated to believe that there's no personal interest powerful enough to incline the heart of a scholar to pervert justice. For the goal of the Torah scholar is to bring merit to his soul, and to stain his soul with sin would hurt him far more than any physical blow. So how could he, for money or for desire to please someone, how could he possibly harm his soul by perverting justice? In addition to this, the quality of truth is the most basic quality of the sage, and even the slightest untruth is alien to him. Such an attitude towards the scholars is that of the mass of honest men who follow the Torah scholars and learn from them. What he's saying is that questioning the scholars is not something that the masses do, but rather the small groups of individuals or people, but not the masses. But the evil inclination can undermine this trust, meaning the trust that the majority of righteous Jews have. The evil inclination can undermine this trust by entrapping those who tend towards convoluted reasoning and offering them a complete theory, supposedly drawn from the Gemara, that personal interest has definitive power for that petty and the great alike. And even the wisest are prey to it, as are the Hasidim and the righteous. The people that like to say that Chachamim have a bias, whether it be a Gdol Ador, a Rav Kanievsky, or a Rav Ovadia, or a nobody like myself, to say, oh, you have bias, everybody has bias, what are you even pretending not to have a bias? They have bias, everybody has a bias. This is the Satan himself. This is the Satan himself at its worst. Why? Because according to this theory, says the Chazon Ish, the scholar who gives in to personal interest has nothing to be ashamed of, for such is human nature. But those who claim so do not know that according to this assumption, the entire generation is thereby orphaned, and there can be no judge and no leaders. For even if a person will recognize the immense wisdom of the wise, he will not feel obligated to obey him, as he will find some reason to claim that the scholar's decision was swayed by personal interest. If the ideas of the Slifkins of the world that say that there is no more Gdolei Torah, this is made by the Haredim, this is nonsense, this is there is no Gdolim, everybody is subject to bias, everybody's the same, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, you're just idolizing people, and it's even against the Torah to do such a thing, and so on and so forth. In essence, what they're doing is that they're taking all leadership, whether it be leadership, the giants of the generation, the Gdolei Torah, the Rav Kanievskis and the Rav Ovadias and the Steipler Gaons and the Rambam and the Rabbi Akiva and even Moshe Rabbeinu, they're taking all of them, they're put to the side. Even more so, they're also taking the small, local leaders, your local rabbi, your local mashgiach, your local kashrut authority, the person that is overseeing that the synagogue is clean, the gabbai of the Beit Knesset. They're also put to the side. Why? They have an agenda. Whatever they're doing, they have an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. And even more so, they're taking the authority of the law of the land, whether it be police or be government or anything else. Why? Because in essence, you're saying that everybody has an agenda in the Torah world, which is in essence supposed to be the elite, the ones that are supposed to be the divinely inspired by more than anybody else. And if they're like everybody else, needless to say, everybody else is the same or less than them, according to that opinion. And therefore, this becomes an orphan society with no leadership whatsoever, and everyone can do whatever they want and doesn't have to listen to anybody. Because why would anybody like a Slifkin listen to anybody unless that person already agrees with what Slifkin or somebody like him believes? Meaning, unless you agree with me, I'm not going to listen. This is mayhem. This is the time of Noach. This is Sodom and Gomorrah with some pictures. This is what it is. That's what they preach. The lefty liberal side, the anti-Torah side, the heretical side, the united with everybody, like everybody, so long as they agree with me side. Those people, simply what they're trying to build is another Tower of Babel. As the Torah says, that they are building a building to make themselves a name. They're all concentrated on making themselves a name, where they want to be famous, they want to be popular, they want everybody else, but with the speech that everybody else is biased. Yet they never reflect on themselves. While they preach that everybody else is biased, everybody else is bought and sold, everybody else is bad, nobody else knows anything, they never say that about themselves, though. If you notice, they themselves are just looking to go higher and higher, and they're looking to be perceived as higher. No different than the communist, no different than the Hitlers of the world, no different than the worst authoritarian psychopaths that ever lived. That is the mentality. The people like Stalin or Hitler or Nikolai, all of these Reshaim, the Nebuchadnezzar, Paro, these people were very clever people. They were not stupid people, quite the opposite. They were very, very clever people that were able to manipulate other people's emotions in such a fashion that they would make you think that their idea is your idea, that you want what they want, and what they want is for your benefit. This is in essence what all of these monsters did until they got the position of power they wanted, and they were able to annihilate anyone that got in their way. But of course they're going to say, yeah, but the good guys, the ones that believe in the Torah, they're the ones that are preaching death penalty. No. We're teaching what the Torah says. The Torah says death penalty, but we also say we can't execute it because the Torah forbids us from executing it simply because we don't have a Sanhedrin. Had we had a Sanhedrin, meaning that had Am Yisrael still had the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to instill his law into the world, we would not only be allowed, we would be forced to do it. We'd be forced to do it. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu enables, we have to do it. But since HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed this from the world, there's nothing for us to do. But that doesn't mean that it's null and void. That just simply means that he himself decided to remove this from the world until further notice. Which is, of course, Mashiach comes, but even then there's not going to be death penalties, simply because people will already be annihilated well before that, at the time of Mashiach, with Gog and Magog and so on. But the point being is that the law of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still executed, but simply by him. Simply by him. He has bedins that are in Shamayim that are going to, in essence, practice what the Sanhedrin used to do in this world, and they execute the order, and of course in a mystical, magical, supernatural way you want to call it, way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs this world. But nonetheless, all of that is still executed in this world. It's just that we, as human beings here, as Jews here, are not allowed to do it. And by teaching it, what we're teaching is that this is the law, and it's simply handled by someone else. Simple. this is the law. It's simply handled by somebody else. Just like you teach little kids the mitzvah of korbanot, even though none of them is a Kohen sometimes. Not a single one of the kids is a Kohen, and will never bring a korban, even if they live to see Mashiach in the Bet HaMikdash. They would never actually be the one that's doing all of these different things in the korbanot. Why? Because you learn this particular part of the Torah, and you also learn that somebody else does certain things. But when you learn it, it's as if you do it. Either way, when people take the truth and manipulate it to fit their own agenda, it also turns the truth into a lie. And that's why even sometimes you'll have people that have the right intentions, but that intention is, unfortunately, has a little bit of personal agenda, personal bias, personal, just something that's selfish in whatever way or another. Unfortunately, that filth ruins the truth. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but nonetheless, it's not 100% true anymore. So here we see that the Chazon Ish said that there are going to be some people that have parts of the truth, but they tend to convolute the truth. They use convoluted reasoning. And those people are unfortunately some of the people that you can't trust. Those people are some of the people that tend to be very dangerous to society because they preach something that is partly true with an ultimate purpose of a lie, with an ultimate goal of a lie, in order to fit their agenda. They figure that since they have some truth in it, the rest of it will work itself out, if you will. So the evil inclination can undermine this trust by entrapping those who tend towards convoluted reasoning and offering them a complete theory supposedly drawn from the Gemara. Gemara, of course, is words of truth. That personal interest has definitive power for the petty and the great alike. Even the wise are prey to it, and Hasidim and the righteous as well. So in essence, by this whole reasoning of saying that everybody is the same, the righteous, the Hasidim, the Gedolei Hador, everybody's the same. They're all biased. So if you're biased, that you're just simply normal. So why are you even claiming not to be biased? It's interesting that they never point the fingers at themselves. According to this theory, the scholar who gives in to personal interest has nothing to be ashamed of, for such is human nature. But those who claim so do not know that according to this assumption, the entire generation is thereby orphaned. And there can be no judges and no leaders, for even if a person will recognize the immense wisdom of the wise, he will not feel obligated to obey him, as he will find some reason to claim that the scholar's decision was swayed by personal interest. This also means that he won't listen to anyone else either, not the law, not police, not the judge, not the judge of Torah, the BEIT, and not the judge of the land. He'll just simply do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, because he thinks that everybody is out there to be against him and for their own interest, because they're all humans and they're all the same. This can be claimed by anyone who is not satisfied with the scholar's decision, and so the generation begins to judge its judges, and anyone can do as he pleases. In any important case, clever ones will whisper to one another for some personal interest that caused the sage, sometimes the greatest sage in a generation, to judge wrongly. In such a case, the city's atmosphere and sometimes the entire country's atmosphere becomes permeated with malicious words, disputes, and feuds. And the source of it all is lack of faith in Torah scholars. Up to here is where we read to up to now, where you see that, in essence, what ends up happening is that you sometimes will have groups of people. They congregate in a synagogue, they congregate in a yeshiva, in a bet midrash, in a restaurant, and today, of course, you have congregate on the internet, Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, and so on and so forth. And they congregate, and unfortunately, many times these congregations, so-called representing unity, create the most amount of animosity instead, create the most amount of separation instead. Why? Because as soon as somebody expresses an idea that is contrary to what the majority of people believe to be true. Now, it's not like if you have a one-on-one conversation. Why? Because if you have a one-on-one conversation, you say A, he says B, you say A, he says B, you say A, he says B, you start bringing each other facts. A has this fact, this fact, this fact, this fact. He says, yeah, but B has this fact, this fact, this fact. This is in essence a debate, a normal debate that can lead to good things. It can lead to both of you seeing the truth that may not even be A or B, a whole new truth that both of you were unaware of, but needed to both aspects in order to arrive at that truth. Or you can see that the other guy is right, or that you are right, and you have more supporting evidence now that you are right indeed. But when you have a group, then unfortunately it doesn't turn out that way. Why? Because one person says the information, the other guy says no. Immediately, there's always somebody out there says, yeah, but he knows more than you. Like something that has no intellectual value whatsoever. Simply taking a personal attack at the other person. Yeah, but he's religious longer than you. What does it have to do with what he said? He said that someone that desecrates Shabbat gets a death penalty from heaven now. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Of him being religious, not religious. He's simply quoting the Rambam, Ilchot Shabbat, chapter 30, Halakha number 15. He also says that is considered an idol worshiper. Like, what does that have to do with religiosity? If he's longer or shorter, what difference does it make? Yeah, but he's a rabbi. Okay, but what does that have to do with anything? Yeah, but this, but that, but that. There's always one person, and then as soon as that one person feels free to jump into the discussion, there has to be a few other minions to jump in also. And then all of a sudden, the person that's defending, whether they're defending the truth or they're defending the lie, feels attacked, and thereby can no longer defend whatever they believe is true in a normal fashion. Why? Because now it's a war. So what do? They also bring, or sometimes, of course, those other people bring themselves to fight the other side. And the whole thing becomes just simply people insulting each other. Yeah, but you're stupid. Yeah, but you're ugly. Yeah, but you're Hasid. And you guys don't eat this. And you guys don't eat that. And you guys are this. And didn't you get divorced 15 times? And didn't your wife this? And what does it have to do with anything? Nothing. All it has to do is that the Satan is dancing. Now, of course, people will think, oh yeah, but it's Torah. At least they're discussing Torah. This is not Torah. This is Bitul Torah, this is Lashon Hara, this is Chilul Hashem, this is all of the sins under the sun. It has nothing to do with Torah. Why? Because you're going at it with a bias. What is that bias? You want to win. That's the bias. And unfortunately, the addiction to win is perhaps one of the most disastrous, one of the most horrific, one of the most addictive desires that a person could have in the Torah world, needless to say otherwise. Desire to win, meaning that all you're doing now is you're preaching whatever you preach because you want to win. Not because you care about the truth, but simply because you want to prove to the other guy or the other girl that you're right and they're wrong. That, my friend, is a bias. It's a very big bias. And it's a bias that takes whatever truth you supposedly had and turns it into not so true. Turns it into truth with a bias that's kind of ugly truth. And of course people will say, yeah, but the truth hurts sometimes. It doesn't have to. Even if it's opposite of what they believe, you don't have to make it painful. You can say whatever you say, and they can choose whether they're hurt by it or not. But of course, if you call them stupid, and if you make fun of them personally, then of course it's going to hurt. And why do you think that they're going to be more receptive, since you've called them stupid? Why do you think that will help? You see, Rabotai, there's a very big difference between fighting for the truth versus fighting for you to be right. Fighting for the truth means that you are trying to show people the truth by showing them what the lie looks like, warning them of the lie, showing and exposing the lie in its ugliest possible fashion to make you disgusted from the lie, so you're not enticed to go to the lie, because if you show the lie the way the liars show the lie, you may end up going to the lie. You may end up wanting to go to the lie because the lie looks delicious, looks beautiful, you want to go there. No, so you have to not only show what the lie is, you have to show how ugly the lie is, how risky it is, how horrific it is. You have to show it in all of its ugly colors, show all the thorns coming out of it. And then show the truth, the beauty of the truth, the wisdom of the truth, the purity of the truth. Why? Because you care. Number one, for the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His truth. Number two, for people to take the truth and absorb it into their lives so they can actually honor Hashem even more and live better lives for themselves. Not because you want people to go and fight you. Not because you want people to say, oh, wow, you're smarter than me. Oh, wow, you're great. No, it's all because you want to help. You want to help magnify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. You want to be a vessel to magnify, sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name even higher. That's your whole purpose. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves His children, loves His creation, you want that creation to also love Hashem. Why? Because if they reciprocate that love to the best of their capabilities, then they'll be included in the reward that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give them anyway. But if you're only looking to sanctify your own name, then guess what? You're not even going to get reward for anything that you're doing. In fact, you're probably going to get punished as a spiritual murderer yourself that preached the truth. And that is one of the things that people don't realize. When you start making things personal, he's ugly, he's stupid, he comes from here, she comes from there, tu-tu-tu, you have ruined the truth no less than the liars do on a regular basis. No less. This is a bias. It's an addiction to want it to be right, to want to win. It's a bias of superiority complex. It's a bias of some type of mentality that you can't lose, that you cannot afford to be wrong. It's not a bias for the truth. Why? Because if you're looking for the truth, that means that you're constantly working at it, but you're also open. You're also open to seeing if it's possible that what you think is true may be wrong. This is why all Chachamim are called Talmidei Chachamim. They're called wise students. Not just wise, but wise students. Wise students. Because if you are looking for the truth of Hashem, you have to be a student always. You always have to yearn for more. Go for more. And sometimes you'll even see some of the greatest sages that ever lived write a psak halacha and later on change that halacha. Say, no, there's new information that came to my knowledge after I paskin this that changes everything. And therefore I was wrong. And they'll publicly write and admit that they made a mistake. With no shame, with no embarrassment. In fact, they're apologetic that they perhaps steered people wrong. But they're happy to have the truth. Because they're not addicted to winning. They're not fighting to win. They're fighting to save people. They're fighting to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name. And unfortunately, many times, the line between fighting for the truth and fighting for yourself and your own ego is very thin. Very easily a person can become addicted to just simply fighting with everybody and anybody just because they like the feeling of winning and they know they have the winning hand. Why? Because they have the Torah, they have halacha, they have what it says. They have an open book, so they know what the Rambam says. They know what Rashi says. They know what everybody says. They know it's in front of them, so it doesn't really take a genius to say, listen, I have the winning hand. You're wrong, I'm right. Why? Because they have the words of the sages. But unfortunately, even though you don't have to search for the truth because you already have it in your hand, you're still fighting a losing battle. Why are you fighting a losing battle? Because you're not fighting for that truth. that the Rambam paskind, or that the Shulchan Aruch paskind, or that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself paskind in the Torah itself. No, you're not fighting for that. You're just fighting to win. You have a winning hand, you have two aces in your hand, and you're just telling the guy, listen, you're an idiot for even playing with me, and even thinking you're going to win. And the guy wants to fight you, not because he thinks he has a strong truth, but just because you're making fun of him. Just because you're taunting him. And that's no different than what the gladiators did in the Colosseum. Whether it's the Colosseum of a couple thousand years ago in the Romans and the Greeks, or the Colosseum of today of people fighting a football game, calling it an event, which unfortunately many Jews, including rabbis, are attending and watching as if it's a big deal in Jewish world. You and your ego and your addiction to winning is taking the winning hand, taking the truth of the Torah and smearing it with filth. Spiritual filth you created with your own hands. Filth full of arrogance, filth full of an agenda, a bias. Not a bias that you're going to be richer because of it. Not a bias that you're going to be smarter because of it. Not a bias that you're going to be even more famous because of it. But a bias for that little bit of feeling where you know you're going to win that debate. That's not a good thing. Why? You've taken the truth and you ruined it.
Wir hören die religiöse Stimmung, in welcher Jid darf sich gefunden in Kippur. Und das ist, ich glaube, als eine von den größten Chesrenes mit Amerikanern, also gerufen eine moderne Orthodoxie ist, sie intellektuell, sie sehr entwickelt. Ich muss auch sagen, meine Talmiden in meiner Klasse, ein Emes Alomdim, ich sage alle, aber eine große Gruppe, Emes Alomdim. Sie wollten gewinnen Alomdim ich weiß, in Jerusalem mehr. Weil ich bin Poshet ein guter Rebbe. Und als ich weiter hier begegne Sach, Jeden Shemre Mitzvahs, aber mir durch sich sehr alle im Feld, oder der Feier, oder die Slaves, oder die Gaguyim, oder die religiöse Stimmung, was unsere Jid gesagt haben, Rosh Hashanah in Kippur, das ist ja ganz Jahr, was speziell Rosh Hashanah in Kippur.
You see, Rabotai, if your goal in teaching, in sharing Torah, is not for the sake of helping people, it's best you don't do anything. Because you're simply going to create more damage than you are going to help. This is why the Chazon Ish continues here and elaborates further and says, the basis for such false notion can be found in the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page 18b, where it says that a king and a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, are not appointed to the court that makes a decision regarding a leap year. The king is not appointed because of a salary, and the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, is not appointed because of the cold. What does this mean? The Gemara is trying to teach us that bias is not a new thing. Bias, in fact, is something that is the Torah warns about already from the beginning, from Matan Torah, from Mount Sinai. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu instituted the laws, he didn't just institute the law of the common man, he also instituted the laws of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. He also instituted the law of the king. He instituted the law of the Sanhedrin, of how to run a Jewish court. He also instituted the law of the leap years. What to do, how to do, when to do. Why? Because we as Jews, we don't have a traditional year like the Gentiles, where some go by the sun, which is a year of 365 days, or some go by the moon, 354 days. We have a unique calendar. A Jewish calendar is a unique calendar where we know that there's an 11-day difference between the calendar of the sun, calendar of the moon, and therefore every 2.5 years, almost 3 years approximately, you have a difference of a month. A difference of a month in the actual date, meaning that if your birthday is, let's say, January 1st, 1990, okay? You were born January 1st, 1990. Now, you are celebrating, let's say, now you just celebrated your 32nd birthday, right? 32nd birthday, January 1st, 2022. You celebrated your 32nd birthday. And you feel, oh, my birthday, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Really, the only two people that celebrate their birthday in the Torah is Nebuchadnezzar and Paro. But nonetheless, you celebrate your birthday according to the Gregorian calendar because you were born on January 1st, 1990, and January 1st just passed a little over a month ago. Truth be told, it's not really your birthday. It's not really your birthday. Why? Because since the way the calendar works, there's an actual month difference every few years. That January 1st of 32 years ago is not exactly 32 years to January 1st of today. Now, of course, the Goyim don't care about this. They have their calendars, they have their system, and they care less about it. But us Jews, we care. Why do we care? Because the Torah obligates us to care. Because we have certain laws that depend on specific and precise timing. Where the Torah says that there are 4 seasons in the year, and Pesach has to be a holiday that is celebrated in the Aviv, in the spring. It has to be. It cannot be a holiday that's celebrated in any other time of the year. Now you would say, oh, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is if the Jews used the Gregorian calendar, that would not be possible because every few years, Pesach would fall in a different season and it would be a Torah violation. In fact, the days of Yom Kippur that we celebrate today, where we know for a fact this is the day to fast, the times we would fast, if we use the Gregorian calendar, would be simply regular days. And the day we're supposed to fast, we would not be fasting. And thereby, the entire nation, Chas v'Shalom, would get a din karet. We would eat chametz on Pesach, thinking that it's a regular day. And on Pesach, eat matzah, thinking we're doing a mitzvah, but in reality, doing nothing. We'd be celebrating Rosh Hashanah as if this is the judgment day, but in reality, it's just the regular day. And the judgment day, we'd be going and hanging out and working and doing whatever we're not allowed to do during that day. Why? Because the Jewish calendar is very precise. It has to be calculated in a specific fashion. And it's critical for us to have a leap year. A leap year that's calculated according to the sages. It's part of the what we had even since the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, where if you look at the Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, it talks about how in the past, the way they would have different people that would identify when's the new month. These people would station themselves on mountains. The first person that would see the moon would then report it. They would come to the Bedin. They would question them. How did the moon look like? And as soon as they confirmed that they really saw the new moon, then they would declare it be a month. And then they would declare certain times would have to be they would have to add a month. So now what is all of this? What does it have to do with the high priest and the king? Why can't the king do this? I mean, the king is supposed to be very righteous. The Torah commands us that a Jewish king, has to have a Sefer Torah on him at all times. He has to walk around with a Torah scroll at all times. He has to, why? To teach him Yirat Shamayim. That's what the Torah says. He has to have a Torah scroll with him at all times so he can learn from it and have fear of heaven at all times. In essence, a Jewish king is supposed to be the most righteous person of the land. So think King David, King Solomon, Chizkiyahu, righteous people. That's what a Jewish king is supposed to be like. On the other hand, you have The Kohen that's the Aaron HaKohen. Last week we learned about Aaron HaKohen and his sons and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to make them the special part of Am Yisrael that have even a unique DNA. A unique DNA that has been verified by scientists that real Kohanim have a unique part of their DNA different than the rest of the species of the world. Unique DNA. So these Kohanim are special people. In fact, the Levi tribe was the only tribe that were not slaves in Egypt because they dedicated themselves to learning Torah, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreed that they would not become slaves like the rest of Am Yisrael. This is what Yeshua ben Nun used as his way to learn Torah even before Moshe Rabbeinu got the Torah as a little kid. The Midrash says that Yeshua ben Nun, after working and doing whatever he can as a little kid, as a slave, because he was from he wasn't from the tribe of Levi, so he would go after a long day, unlike the rest of his friends and kids his age that would sleep, would play, would do whatever it is that they had time to do. Yeshua ben Nun would sneak out of his house and go to the place of the Leviim. Why? To go hear words of Torah. One day there was an announcement that Moshe ben Amram came back, the brother of Aaron HaKohen, the brother of Aaron, that he is the messenger that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent, he's the Mashiach, that's going to bring salvation to the people. And little Yeshua ben Nun decided in that moment he's going to be next to this Moshe Rabbeinu 24 hours a day. As a little kid. And he went wherever Moshe Rabbeinu went. Why? He wanted to learn whatever he could learn. Fast forward, Mount Sinai. Everybody said, we would listen. Yeshua ben Nun followed Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, but everybody else, okay, they said we'll listen. Then we're going to go hang out while he's in Mount Sinai over there talking to HaShem 40 days, 40 nights because it's too scary for the rest of us to hear. Yeah, but I want to be with him. Yeah, but you can't go up there. Okay, so I'll wait at the bottom of the mountain. Why are you going to wait, Yeshua ben Nun? Why are you going to wait at the bottom of the mountain? Hang out with the rest of the people. No. I'm going to hang out at the bottom of the mountain. Why? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu comes down, whenever he comes down, I want to learn whatever he has to say. I made it too earlier than everybody else. So you're going to wait at this mountain for however long it takes? Yes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw the heart of Yeshua ben Nun and said, he's for real. And he brought him the man that went to everybody wherever they were, went to Yeshua ben Nun where he was at the bottom of the mountain. And also the Midrash and the Gemara also says that the man also had special diamonds that made everybody rich. All types of wonderful things. Yeshua ben Nun did not miss out on anything. So this Yeshua ben Nun, Kodesh Kodashim, became the next leader. Why did he become the next leader? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that he had Yirat Shamayim, saw that he had humility, saw that he loved the Torah. He loved the Torah. So when people love the Torah, they love the truth, they have to do whatever they can to fight for the truth. But the second they mix their own opinion, their own agenda, their own desires, their own addictions, they start ruining the truth. The more of their own filth, the less of the truth there is to see. And you see, Rabotai, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to make the Leviim, this special tribe, he took all of it into account. That it's going to start with Aaron, and there's going to be another Kohen, one day named the Chafetz Chaim, Israel Meir HaKohen, and there's going to be other tzaddikim. All of them were taken into account. All of these Kohanim were taken into account. All of these righteous people, and unfortunately sometimes wicked people, but they're all going to be part of this special part of Am Yisrael called the Kohanim. So you see there's a lot of really special people that were learning at the time of Egypt, learning at the time of right before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, after a lot of amazing people. So of course, they're all capable of doing everything they're doing in the Bet HaMikdash. Why aren't they able to be part of the Bet Din to judge for the new month, like everybody else? That's not even a Kohen. The Gemara explains. You see, There is an unseen poison in every man and woman. There's an unseen poison that sometimes is more lethal than every other poison you can possibly imagine. In fact, there's a poison that's so lethal, most people don't even realize it exists. And it's called a bias, a negia. How could the Kohen and the king have a bias? And what does it have to do with salary for the king, who's typically the richest man of the land, and cold for the Kohen, which typically works inside the Beit HaMikdash? What do the two things have to do with it? The Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin explains, you see, if we have the king serve on the Beit Din to decide whether it's going to be a leap year or not, whether it's going to be 13 months this year or 12, we're going to have a problem. Why is it a problem? Because you see, the king is not like the rest of us. You're thinking it's going to be 12 months or 13 months. Either way, it doesn't really make much of a difference to you. Whether it's going to be Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni, first Adar, second Adar, doesn't make much of a difference to you. Perhaps maybe your wife is going to like it that she has more time to clean for Pesach. But in reality, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't make much of a difference for you. The king, it does. Why? Because the king is thinking, wait a minute, hold on a second. I pay my soldiers, I have 1 million soldiers. I pay each soldier $1,000 a month. Now, I pay them based on 12 months. I have 1 million soldiers, $1,000 a month. You're talking about $1 billion. It's a lot of money. Now you're telling me that I have to add a month, 13th month? That's another, whoa, you're killing me here. No way. We'll leave it at 12 months, not a leap year. It's not a leap year. Yeah, but you're the king, you're the most righteous. Okay, I'm the most righteous. That's why I'm telling you, no leap year. Why? Because he has, hold on a second. If I add a leap year, it's going to cost me all this money. It's going to cost me all this money to add a leap year. Why do I want to add a leap year? Just leave it at 12 months. It's fine. We worked out last year, Yeah, but don't you realize that if we don't add a leap year, then people are going to eat chametz on Pesach? If we don't add a leap year, we don't add a month, people are going to fast on the wrong day and not fast on the day they're supposed to fast. Karet for everybody. Listen, you're exaggerating, you're this, you're that. Ooh, what? And what about the Kohen? The Kohen, the Tzaddik, the Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen that goes to the Kodesh Kodashim, that he's not even allowed to think of anything other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If he thinks about anything other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu, meaning, even if he thinks about his own wife, and how she's doing, because he hasn't seen her in a week, Sigmara Masechet Yomah, where it says that the Kohen Gadol has to be separated from his wife for a period of time before Yom Kippur. So now this Kohen, this tzaddik, we cannot ask him to join us at the Beit Din to decide whether it's going to be a leap year or not. Why? Cold. What cold? What does he care about cold? The Kohen Gadol has to dip in the mikveh. And during the regular year, it's, oh, nice, it's warm, everything's okay. But if I make a leap year, if I add a month, then I'm going to have the mikveh of Yom Kippur, the high holidays, fall on the colder part of the winter. The water is going to be colder for me. I'm an old man. I don't want to be colder. I'm an old man, the Kohen says. I don't want to be older. That's what you're worried about, Mr. Kohen Gadol, Tzaddik, Kadosh, colder mikveh. That's what you're worried about. Don't you realize that you could cause people eternity? They could be eating chametz on Pesach. They could be fasting on the wrong day. They could be praying on the wrong day. It's cold water. It's cold water. Don't worry. Kadosh Baruch Hu understands. It's cold water. Now, which types of king and which types of Kohen is the Gemara referring to? Wicked ones? Here the Chazon Ish elaborates. He says, the king and the high priest are not appointed to the court that makes a decision regarding a leap year. The king, because of the salary that he is to pay his army, which depends on this decision. And the high priest, because of the cold adding an extra month will push off Yom Kippur by a month, when it will be colder, and therefore harder for the high priest, for the Kohen Gadol, to perform the immersions and the hand washing required by him on that holy day. And this rule holds for the most pious of the kings and for the most pious of the high priests, such as Shimon HaTzadik. And it's further said in Masechet Ketubot, he gives another example of how bias that the Torah prepared us for, that the Torah warned us about, is not bias of manipulators, wicked, openly wicked people like Nathan Slifkin and Goldberg and all these other Reshaim, but rather people that you don't need to warn anybody about. We warn people about these people because they're a danger to society. They're a danger to society, and we hope that enough people do tshuva if they're already following them. But we're talking about that the warnings of the Torah are warnings about the bias that a righteous person could potentially have, because it is human nature to have certain things in your thoughts. Wait, so this would negate what the Chazon Ish already said a moment ago. And we're going to deal with that problem in a moment. The Chazon Ish gives another problem. Another example. He says in the Gemara Masechet Ketubot, page 105b, Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yossi, had a tenant who would bring him a basket of fruits before every Shabbat. Once, this tenant delivered the fruit earlier, on Thursday, telling him that he was already coming into town anyway, because it was a market day, but also telling him, by the way, I have a court case at the BEIT tomorrow, which you are going to be one of the judges. Rabbi Ishmael heard this and told them, I disqualify myself from judging the case and also accepting the fruits from you. Why? It's a bias. I don't want to have any agenda. I don't want to like you more. No. I don't want this. The Gemara says that Rabbi Ishmael, to check himself, followed the case anyway. He didn't judge the case, but he followed from the outside to see how the case is judged by the other Dayanim, the other righteous Dayanim. And the Gemara says he found himself finding arguments in the favor of his tenant. And a similar story is told by Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Elisha. So, the Rabbi Ishmael sees his tenant, nice guy, delivers him fruit, and he says, hold on a second, I already know you, I like you, on top of it, you just did me a favor, you brought me the fruits earlier, which is nicer to have the fruits and the stuff that I need earlier than Friday, but that makes me like you even more. How much more? Maybe half of 1% more, but nonetheless, it's still more. You find favor in my eye. Already that disqualifies me from being a dayan for you. That disqualifies me in being a dayan for you. Now to check himself, to check his own truth, to see how the Torah is fulfilled, he himself followed the case. And he saw how when the other dayanim were questioning his tenant, did he do this, did he go here, did he go that, he noticed that subconsciously he's thinking to tell the guy, tell his tenant, no, say this, because they'll agree with you on that. Say that. Subconsciously, he wants to feed him lines and tell him what to say so he can win. Proving what the Torah already said. Because you like him just a little bit more, because you know him, because you like him just a little bit more, automatically that can distort your judgment of him. That little bit of bias. So if this bias is something that everybody is subject to, the Kohen Gadol and the king and the Sanhedrin and everybody, so technically it's contrary to what the Chazon Ish says, that he says that the wicked people make you think that everybody's the same. The explanation is as follows. The reason why the Torah specifically shows us how far the measure is, how far the effort is that the judges, that the sages have to go to in order to eliminate any type of personal agenda, any type of bias that they have, where the moment that they sense that they have a bias, the moment that they know that a bias is even possible, that I can't judge him because he is somebody that I like, he is my student, he is my tenant, he did me a favor, he opened a door for me, he gave me a ride. The second I realize that there is even a possibility that I would like him a little bit more naturally, that already means that I can't judge him anymore. That already means I can't judge him anymore. Why? I have a bias. So, because we are aware of this bias and teach this bias since the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, warn about this bias being something that is part of everybody, because we emphasize the importance of the warning of this bias, that's what makes the judges, the great sages, not the same. That's what makes them different. That's what makes the Torah scholar different from everybody else. Because while the average person that means well, wants to fight for the truth, wants to say the truth, he may not be aware that part of him or part of her that's motivating the fight is their addiction to winning. Part of him, part of her that's motivating them to be as zealous because they want people to think that they're really smart. Part of him, part of her, that inspiring them to spend a lot of time on the internet, sharing whatever message that they're sharing, and arguing with anybody that is disagreeing, and even insulting a few well put together insults to the people that deserve it according to them. It's not necessarily because of the honor of HaShem so much as it is the honor of words that came out of their mouth, because you should respect me since I said the truth according to them. Meaning that their bias is not even something they're aware of. And in fact, if you ask them, they'll say, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? I'm biased for the truth. Isn't that a good thing? No. Because you're not biased for the truth. You're biased for you, which happens to be true now. And if you had the mistake in your hand, you would be just as biased. Meaning that it's good that you have the truth. Baruch Hashem, that Hashem had mercy on you and you have the truth, and that's what you're biased, that's what's in your hand right now, it's the tool you're with right now. But so long as you're not monitoring your own bias, so long as you're not controlling yourself, so long as you are expressing anger at the person and not his actions, so long as you're insulting the person and not his actions, so long as you're not looking to help him but rather insult him, so long as you're looking to beat him and not help him and save him, so long as you're not really caring about anything about him but rather everything about you, so long as you only care about the people on your team and not anybody on theirs, so long as you care about you and not him or her, you, my friend, are fighting for yourself. You happen to have the right weapons. You happen to have the truth. But the truth that you're preaching is full of personal lies. And it won't have the same blessing, the same siyata dishmaya, that someone that has the truth and preaching it for the sake of the truth will have. I'll give you an example. One of the greatest sages that lived among us is Rav Ovadia. In recent years, of course. Rav Ovadia, his Rav, is Rav Yehuda Tzadka. Rav Yehuda Tzadka was Kodesh Kodeshim, head of Yeshivat Porat Yosef. When they would go and speak together, they had so much respect for each other that Rav Yehuda Tzadka wouldn't get up and speak. No, I can't speak. Rav Ovadia, the Gdol Ador, is here. And Rav Ovadia would say, I can't speak, my rabbi is here. Chas v'shalom, that would speak in front of my rabbi. And it would go back and forth. Until Rav Yehuda Tzadka would tell Rav Ovadia, okay, if I'm really your Rav, listen to me and you speak first. That's how much respect they had for each other. Now, to build Porat Yosef was not something that you can do with simply money. There are many yeshivot, there are many buildings, there are many people. And you don't have 2 Porat Yosefs in the world. Years ago, when they were needing to build Porat Yosef, take it to the next level, a lot of money was needed. They set up an event in the United States with all the well-to-do donors, people that have a lot of money to donate for Torah, and important people that were interested in helping the famous yeshiva of Porat Yosef. They set up a dinner. Rav Yehuda Tzadka and Rav Ovadia were both invited to present this big thing in front of these well-to-do people. Before the event, before Rav Yehuda Tzadka got to speak, he learned that these people, many of them attending this event, although they're very rich financially, they're extremely poor spiritually. Many are driving on Shabbat, eating non-kosher, and all types of other spiritual crimes against Hashem. Of course, this is sad, but nonetheless, there's a job here to do. Raise money for the yeshiva. Build the world of Torah to what it is today. A speaker came up before Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka and started praising the crowd. A speaker that was already benefiting from them, benefiting from their generosity, because they love to donate for the sake of Torah. And this speaker, this rabbi, praised them of how righteous they all were, how amazing they all were, and how all of their sins surely are forgiven, because surely such donors as yourself are going to be welcomed into heaven by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself. Praising them and assuring them that their tzedakah, so long as it continues, is guaranteeing them a place next to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. After him, Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka goes up. His face does not look happy, and his words follow suit. Rav Tzadka starts screaming from pain, starts howling from pain, saying, "Oi!" After hearing such words, after hearing such Chilul Hashem from the previous speaker, according to the Torah, we should all be ripping our clothes for such desecration of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. Live in front of everybody there, the speaker included. He says, hearing such lies and such desecration of Hashem, we should all rip our clothes because of such things. Because we all know that among us here there are people that are desecrating Shabbat, people that are eating treif, people that are not keeping the Torah. And anyone here, he says, that thinks for a moment that their tzedakah is going to make up for their sins, has a big mistake in their hand. Because surely there's a Gemara that says that anyone that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu lets go of sins, his life will be let go. And although I am jealous and envious of you that you have the merits of supporting Torah, my heart cries for you all, for the sins that you're making, that will decree all of you in the worst possible punishments. Now, of course, the people that arranged this event to raise money, perhaps even take a few points for themselves, saw this as all is lost. On one hand, you cannot say anything against the Rosh Yeshiva of Porat Yosef. On the other hand, he just killed all of our leads, all of our donors, by telling them they're all wicked and their tzedakah is not going to help. Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka continues this way, telling them that how they all must do tshuva and not think for a moment that their tzedakah is going to help. And he says, don't give me any money. I believe if I was there, I'd probably be looking at the guy that arranged the event and see if he had a heart attack or not after hearing such words. When the head of Porat Yosef, one of the Gdolei Hador, says, I don't want your money. Don't give me any money for the yeshiva. I want Shabbat. I want kashrut. I want you to learn Torah. And abruptly, he walks away from the microphone and sits down in agony to himself, putting his hands in his face together and mourning to himself. Silence that has never been imagined hit the place until everyone hears one of the people in the crowd, one of the rich people, the really rich people, start crying like a baby. Start crying like a baby and saying, for the first time in my life, the rabbi came to speak to me and not to my money. This few words caused other people to start crying for their own status, realizing that their whole lives they've been making the mistake of thinking that the very same money that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them, is the money that's going to build a Torah while they themselves desecrate it. Realizing how this doesn't make any sense, and unfortunately how sometimes it was the leaders, the rabbis, the speakers, the whoever that had an agenda too big for them to see the person behind the money. Too big for them to see that that person also wanted to go to heaven. And there was no way they can if they just donated money without action behind it. Other people got emotional. And then, in a extraordinary turn of events, they all walked up to Rav Yehuda Tzadka. And they said, Kvod Rav, we all promise to do what you say. How do we do tshuva? Teach us. What do we have to do? What do we have to keep? How do we keep it? If you teach us, we're all going to do it. Everyone agreed to do tshuva that moment. And for anyone that thought for a second that you can lose for doing Hashem's will, the very same rich person that apparently others that were also rich but were influenced by him agreed automatically with whatever he said. And he said, Rabbi, I also want to make sure you know, every one of us already thought about what they're going to donate before you came here. But after you spoke to us, we're all going to give 3 times what we're going to give. Whatever everyone decided already they're going to give, each one of us already agreed to give 3 times that. Because we want to be with you. We want to be with the truth. We want to be with somebody that cares about us, not the money. That's how Yeshivat Porat Yosef became as extraordinary as it is. It wasn't the money, Rabotai. It was the truth without an agenda. The truth without a bias that I need to win, or I need to build, or there is no I. When a person loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that means he loves his people too. And if he loves his people, that means he looks at their neshama, not their pocket. That means he cares about their heaven, not their house. That means he cares about anything and everything that can destroy that heaven. even if that Jew is currently an enemy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and even if that Jew is a Jew that you're speaking against because of bad things that he's doing, the second that Jew does tshuva, you will be more celebratory over his tshuva than anybody else. Why? Because not only is his tshuva gonna stop causing him to sin, but it'll also stop other people from sinning. And many people are going to sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name rather than desecrate it. Many more people are going to go to heaven rather than burn in Gehenna. Many more people are going to go and give nachat to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give them the reward that he wanted to give them in the first place. As the Mishnah in Masechet Ukatzin, the last Mishnah, the last Masechet, says that every righteous Jew has 310 worlds. 310 worlds designated to him or her for being righteous. If you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that means you love each one of his children to the point that you cry because they don't have those 310 worlds. You're not looking for them to go to Gehenna. And that's why you speak about Gehenna. That's why you speak about the punishment. That's why you warn about the punishment. And that's why you tell them as many details as possible about the punishment. Lest they hear it enough times that it will break the klipa, the addiction to the sins that they have, the addiction to winning that they have, the addiction to garbage that they have, and hopefully do tshuva and abandon the bad ways and earn themselves those 310 worlds. And even if you yourself will never get a single dime of success in this world or the next, you'll never get a single merit for it, recognition for it, a mitzvah for it even, it's still endlessly rewarding to know that another child of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is now destined to go to heaven instead of destined to go to Gehenna. So yes, you teach about death penalties and Gehenom and Kafakela and Chibuta Kever and the worst possible things. Because the Gaon Mivilna, Rabbi Yisrael Misalant, and all of the greatest sages that taught the subject, taught it on a regular basis, knowing that this is necessary for many people to do tshuva, needless to say, not just in their generation, but also ours. When a person loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he loves his children, and he doesn't want those children, however wicked they are today, to end up in Gehenna. And he looks forward, she looks forward, they look forward to the day that your harsh words, your harsh language broke the klipa just enough to open up that neshama that they have already instilled in them that yearns for the truth, no less than it did for Menashe, who was completely more wicked than anybody else on earth today. But he did tshuva. He had that neshama, and he did tshuva. When you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you love his Torah, and you love his children, you want all of his kids to be there. In fact, you want even the people that hate HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be there. Only as lovers, though. And if that means you have to scare them to death, then so be it. Because it's better you scare them to death and they end up living forever in happiness, sanctifying HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, than not scaring him to death and them dying over and over again for eternity, and the worst possible punishment that could happen to a person. If you're going to fight for the truth, remove your agenda, remove your personal interest, remove your pride, your ego, and even your addiction to winning. Do it for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name, and you've already won. ברוך אדוני לעולם, אמן ואמן.
אני מברך את הרבנים, רגע. אני מברך את הרבנים, הרב ירון ראובן, הרב אפרים כחלון, ראשי ארגון בעזרת השם, שהלכו בפי עליון, שעלו מעלה, יהיה להם ברכה והצלחה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ימלא בישועות ליבם לטובה ולברכה, שבכל מה שיפנו ישכילו ויצליחו, יזכו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הודיעו תורה לאדירה, אמן ואמן.
בעזרת השם רשת בכל הארץ. הוא היהודי הזה, הוא היה מיליונר, סגר את כל הביזנס, אמר אני משקיע פה בעולמה של תורה.
איפה הוא גר?
בפלורידה.
פלורידה, איפה זה פלורידה? באמריקה.
במיימי. כן, ליד. אנחנו שם עכשיו הולכים להקים קהילה ספרדית.
חזק אותו בשמי.
קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
תעביר לו מה שבירכתי אותו.
כן, קהילה ספרדית גדולה.
כן.